Grace to you and peace from God our Father and his Son, our Lord and Savior, Jesus Christ. Amen. So after all that talk of food, are you getting hungry right now? Getting close to lunch, you want a little snack after church maybe? Starting to wonder if there's anything good? I'm feeling it. A little bit of hunger. We all know what it's like to feel hungry, though. Maybe not starving, but definitely what it's like to be a little uncomfortable and hungry. That feeling in your stomach, that mild mood change maybe, when you get hungry. We know what that's like. In our gospel today, Jesus looks at the crowds that have followed him and he recognizes they're going to be in that place soon. They're going to need some sustenance. They're going to need something in their stomachs to help them on their journey home. They're going to need food because they are hungry people. And I don't think their only problem is physical hunger. If you look at the beginning of the story and at the stories that come afterwards, people are following Jesus because he's healing people and doing miracles, and they are hungry for healing and for wholeness. And after they're fed, they try and make Jesus king. They are hungry for a leader. And even the disciples, when Jesus comes walking on the water, they are hungry for something. They are hungry for truth, for understanding, and for faith. And we too are hungry people. We hunger for more than just physical food. We hunger to be set free from our sins, from the scripts that other people impose on us, from our own sense of not being good enough. We hunger to be in community, to be a part of something, to not be alone in this world, to share and to give and to receive. We hunger for wholeness, not just for physical healing or emotional healing, but for a full sense of being satisfied, healthy, and whole in the presence of God. For being fully who we are created to be. By that lakeside, Jesus knows the people hunger for many things. And so he heals the sick. He listens to their sorrows and he gives them bread to eat. He recognizes their hunger and he addresses it. And he starts with one small little thing, that little boy's lunch. A few loaves of bread and a couple of fish. And from that, Jesus feeds thousands of people. John calls this in his writing, John calls this one of Jesus' signs, one of the miracles Jesus does that points to him as the Messiah. It's one of the ways he demonstrates God's power flowing through him. He takes something small and he multiplies it so that all receive what they need. All have enough. All are full. And they're not just full, there are even leftovers. After everyone eats, Jesus practices a little recycling, a little ecology, and he tells the disciples, go get the scraps. We don't want to waste anything. And when they do, they discover that not only have all the people been fed, but there are 12 baskets of leftovers. There's enough to feed even more people. When we are hungry in any way, God provides for us. God provides more than enough so that we are full to overflowing. Sometimes God provides for us through miracles or some form of divine intervention that we recognize. I'm sure we've either experienced or heard stories about people who've had just the right amount of money show up just when they need it. Or that door that opens to a new opportunity just as the last door closes. But sometimes God provides for us in ways that don't seem so obvious. Sometimes our needs are met, our hunger fulfilled by people in our lives. People who God has sent and placed in our lives for that very reason. People that we may or may not recognize as one small instance of God's desire to fill us to overflowing with all that we need. The theme of the ELCA youth gathering, which I and a couple of our youth just returned from, the theme for the whole gathering was Rise Up Together. And like our gospel reading today, it sort of has that sense about it of something small that creates incredible results. From one boy's lunch, Jesus feeds the multitudes. When God calls one person to rise up, many people are affected. And when God calls many people to rise up together, some really incredible stuff happens. And so the theme for the week was Rise Up Together. But each evening as we gathered with 30,000 youth in Ford Field, we talked about different themes each night. And they were bear burdens, break chains, build bridges, and bring hope. And all of those things are things that we hunger for in our lives. We hunger that for our burdens to be borne, for our chains to be broken, for bridges to be built, and for there to be hope in our lives. And so I want to share with you some of the stories of our youth gathering, because I want you to hear these stories of being fed. And so I'll start with building bridges. We did a lot of bridge building in Detroit, a lot of community building. But it started with our bus ride to get there. Because we took a bus, and there were 5 different churches on that bus. 5 different churches that we didn't know anything about, really. And we were all crammed on this one bus together, and we spent 11 hours together on the bus. We had to learn to live together in that trip. But by the time we were returning home from Detroit, the youth were talking to one another, they were sharing their lunches, they were doing all sorts of things together because we had been building community. And you could see the community building with all of the youth at the youth gathering through the whole week, because everywhere you went, there were group after group that was sharing high fives. You'd walk down the street and just go like this, and you'd get like 50 high fives, because that's what everybody was doing. And they shared that not only with each other, but with all of the workers and random people in town and anyone they came across. We built bridges. One day, we had a member of our group, not someone from our church, but a member of the group that we traveled with, that had a small issue. He needed some help. And so we worked together to bear some burdens. Because you see, they were playing a game in the Cobo Center, which was this big convention center with all sorts of crazy stuff to do, like zip lines and bounce houses and sporting fields, and also learning activities like you'll see some pictures of the Walk for Water that we were part of. All kinds of stuff was happening in this convention center. And so this young man was playing some sports, and his shorts ripped. And being a teenage boy, he was a little embarrassed about this. And so he called the adults, which was a smart thing to do. And we worked together, and we found him some safety pins, and he pinned himself back together for a little while. But fortunately, he decided to play some more basketball, and the rip got bigger. And so by the end of the day, he was asking us, please, can we go somewhere where I can get some new shorts? We understood. We didn't really know where that place was. So talking through a couple people, we finally discovered that the only place nearby to buy shorts was at Tigers Stadium, the baseball team. Tigers Stadium, they had a store, and there were shorts in the store. So we went there and discovered that because there was a game that night, you could not get into the store. You didn't have a ticket to get into the stadium. So we were a little disappointed. But as we walked past the stadium and past a couple more gates at the stadium, one of the security guards at one of the gates started talking to our youth And she talked to them, and then she was going, "Oh, do you remember me? I was at the center this morning." And she had worked security at the Kobo Center earlier that day when we had been there. She'd worked on one of the doors. "Oh, do you remember me?" And the kids were like, "I don't know." But she was so excited to see people that she recognized. And so we took advantage of this moment, and we said, explain the situation about this poor kid in his shorts and his need for new shorts. And this guard found someone else to cover her post, let this kid and one of our adults into the stadium without having to pay, escorted them down to the store, and then used her employee discount to help this kid buy a pair of shorts. She bore his burden that day, and she helped us bear his burden that day. On Saturday, the hottest day of the whole trip, we went out to serve in the community. It was our work day, our service day, and we got a late start for many reasons. There were some delays along the way, but eventually we made it to this neighborhood on the west side of Detroit. And the neighborhood looked like many of our neighborhoods, but I would guess that only one in every third house was occupied. And all the other houses were overgrown and abandoned, and doors had been ripped off and windows broken. And we were one of many groups in that area cleaning up those lots that were vacant. And since we got there late, it didn't seem to us like we did all that much work. In fact, the kids talked about that later, like, we wish we could have gotten there sooner, we could have done so much more. But there was a guy that came around, we talked to some of the people in the neighborhood, and there was one guy that came around several times and told us over and over again how much nicer the neighborhood looked because we were there. And how, because we had started the work, he had confidence that he and his neighbors could continue the work. That it wasn't so overwhelming, that now maybe they could keep up with not only their house, but the house next door. We broke chains that day. We freed that neighborhood to take control of their own situation and care for their own streets. We gave them a start, and we gave them some hope. The hope that they needed to make it through one day, and then one more day, and then one more day. We broke chains. We built bridges. We bore burdens. Because of all of that, we brought hope for us and for the city of Detroit. And I want to give the kids a chance to say something too. They know they have to say something. So I'm going to invite, we have 2 youth that went from Prince of Peace, so come on up here. And I didn't warn the others, but we also had a couple that went as community volunteers. And I'm looking at them and they're shaking their head at me. The Brookers went as community volunteers. Do you want to say anything? See? Okay, come on up and join us. I didn't give them any warning. The boys, however, have warning. They're going to share with you one of their favorite part of the trip, and then one thing they learned. And they've had a whole service to think about it now. So they should be good. All right, so go for it, Cameron.
So the best part of the trip for me was going into the neighborhood and cleaning up the city. All the people in there were so appreciative of us cleaning up that part.
I think besides the kid on a trip ripping his pants, the favorite part of the trip
It was
for
Josh's fault, by the way.
Yeah, both times. But probably one of my favorite parts was going to the stadium with 30,000 other people and listening to the great music and the speakers that they had for us, and just being a part of this huge thing. And especially on the last day when we got to go to a service with 30,000 other people and have communion, it was really pretty awesome experience.
Yeah. Eric, you want to say something? Just say something. Whatever you'd like to say about your experience as a volunteer would be great.
Sure. Thanks for the heads up.
Yeah, sorry.
You know, my wife and I have been part of a few gatherings. I actually got to go when I was 15 back in a while ago, down to Atlanta, and I've gone back several times, and most recently with my wife as a volunteer. And I think that what's amazing to me is I remember this as a youth, and I still see it as an adult now. Is really people understanding that the Lutheran world is so much bigger than their church at home or the church in their state, or it's nationwide. And it's just fun watching people meet people from all over the country, in some cases all over the world, and sharing those beliefs and worshiping together.
Great, thank you. Josh, you want to do something you learned? Yeah.
Something I learned.
Go ahead. Something you learned.
Yeah, something I learned was that the people in Detroit really appreciated us being there. On our work day when we went there were people. What was his name again? Yeah, I forget his name, but there were a lot of people who came around that lived in Detroit and talked about how much they appreciated us cleaning up their city. Because, like Pastor Amber said, our one group didn't do too much. Like, we did a lot with the one house, but with 30,000 people, all of us got a lot of work done, and they really appreciated all the stuff that we were doing for their city, and they really wanted to continue what we were doing long past when we left.
So on one of the days we did the walk for water thing, and I learned that it was very difficult to do all that stuff, walk for 4 miles with a 5-gallon can of water, which is.
Yeah, we walked a 1/10 of a mile. It was a long trip.
Yeah, so there was obstacles such as heat, floods, and other stuff like diarrhea and stuff. So it was interesting.
Great. Thank you. Yep. Thanks, guys. Yeah, you'll get to see some of the pictures of the walk for water. Not of us carrying it because somebody else took those pictures, but it was quite a trip. And we only went a 1/10 of a mile. They told us, you can come back when it's not busy, and you can walk the full 3.7 miles that most African women walk in a day with this thing. And I went, that sounds cool, until I walked my 1/10 of a mile and went, that doesn't sound cool, we're done. So that's a heavy can at the end. But anyway, I hope in these stories you hear some of how we were fed and how we were able then to feed others. How God rose up and filled us with freedom and strength and creativity and hope. And because we were overflowing, others were filled as well. And I want to leave you today with a song that became sort of the theme song of the gathering. And when the artist who wrote it was asked, he told us this. He was like, people keep asking me, is this a song about God rising up, or is this a song about us rising up for the world? And he said, the answer is yes. It's about God rising up in us and us rising up in the world. When you came in and when you grabbed your bulletin, there should have been sheets with lyrics so that you can follow along if you want. I do want to apologize for those of you who don't like rap music. I apologize. There is a little rap. It's not all rap. And I wanted to share this song with you because the lyrics are beautiful. And the song is beautiful. And the little bit of rap in it, I apologize if you're not a fan. But that's why I gave you the words so you can follow along and hear what he's saying even when you have trouble hearing it. You'll also be able to see some of the pictures, which will be cool.
I question if the treasure in my chest is live enough for resurrection. Do I practice what I profess, or just practice professing? When unexpectedly beckon to the midst of the wreckage, I'm asking to be uplifted with an authentic affection. We're broken, yes, but irresistibly, inextricably, inseparably connected. Alone and perfect, but together, we help men back together the most perfect bridge. Building bridges, breaking chains, bearing burdens, hope remains. We will rise up like the sun, led by the risen one. Rise up, oh. also make us alive. Loving our neighbors and we love them in the name of our God. Compassion, not just words but action. Rising from the ashes just like Lazarus from the casket. God is in the neighborhood. Get it, got it good. We got this assignment. No stopping, keep shining. Know you know me, just us. Let's rise up together. Let's together rise up. Rise up. Oh God, with blessings on your people. Rise up together. Your love's gonna break the chains. Rise up. Oh God, with blessings on your people. So if we rise like heroes, then we'll rise too. And though we're crying, dying doesn't have the final. And neither does destruction. We keeping on believing in that Jesus resurrection. We practice it, we get after it, like mathematicians master it. It happens, the gavel of compassion, God has been dropping it. All rise for the call, healing for the nations and justice for us all. Hungry get to eat again, worried find their peace within. Everybody's gonna get a home and never have to wonder where they're gonna ever get to sleep again. J-E-S-U-S, blessed to bless, fresh to death, seeking peace, more and more, seeking war, less and less. Resurrect, he's driving the bones that need it. Death has been defeated, watch him rise up like a phoenix. Oh God, with blessings on your people, rise up together. Your love's gonna break the chains. Rise up, oh God, with blessings on your people. Freedom from unjust oppression. Shelter for those with no home. Peace for those who live with violence. And there's love for those who feel alone. Welcome for those on the outside.